In the early 1960s, the Big Three, Ford, GM and Chrysler, sought ways to bypass the restrictions of the 1957 AMA, or Automobile Manufacturers Association, ban on factory-sponsored racing, which had been put in place following the 1955 Le Mans disaster and the 1957 NASCAR Mercury grandstand crash. The saying, "Win on Sunday, sell on Monday," was especially relevant when NASCAR and NHRA cars closely resembled their street legal counterparts. To put things in perspective, the pony car didn't exist yet, so the Mustang, Firebird and Challenger were way off, which left the Big Three to focus on their other models and primarily their full-size cars for racing. In the world of super stock drag racing, each company wanted to create the ultimate car. Chrysler had their formidable 426 Max Wedge planted into the Plymouth Savoy. GM countered this with their 427 Z11 Impala, and Ford had their Galaxy lightweight. In 1961, the Galaxy was powered by Ford's souped-up 390 V8, but soon found itself outmatched by the larger 400 plus cubic inch engines of GM and Chrysler. By 1962, Ford had released a 406 version of the 390, which comfortably exceeded 400 horsepower. This upgrade improved the performance of the Ford-powered super stock cars and gave them what they needed to start winning. The story goes that Andy Houghton of Dearborn Steel Tubing, or DST, built a 406 powered 1962 Fairlane and coupled it to an automatic transmission. He drove it around Dearborn to demonstrate to Ford that the engine could be fitted to this car without significant modifications under the hood. DST were famous for preparing Ford's factory race cars like the Falcons driven by Joe Weatherly and Chris Turner in the car's first victory at Daytona. In 1963, Ford introduced a 427 cubic inch version replacing the 406, but the Galaxies all shared one problem: they are all just too heavy, and as any racer will tell you, power is only part of the equation. Weight plays a huge role as well. Eventually, Ford instructed Andy Houghton to sell the Fairlane 406 to Tasker Ford of Warwick, Rhode Island. Tasker campaigned the car in 1963, replacing the engine with a 427 and painting it blue. So while DST built the 406 Fairlane, it was Tasker Ford that campaigned the modified version with the 427 as an AFX car during the 63 season, achieving great success and briefly holding the class record and determining that this combination would give Ford the weight break it needed to be able to run with the Max Wedge Mopars and the soon to be released Hemis. Ford, however, were focused on the lightweight Galaxy LWG program, and despite extensive weight reduction, the Galaxies remained too heavy for racers, weighing just over 3,400 pounds, while the NHRA class minimum was 3,200 pounds. With a similar engine power across all manufacturers, these extra 200 pounds put the Galaxies at a serious disadvantage. The modified 427 Fairlane, campaigned by Tasker Ford, led them to being credited with launching the Thunderbolt as a serious NHRA contender and leading to Andy Houghton later receiving an order in 1964 to build them. As a side note, there are also two 1964 Ford Falcon 427 AFX drag cars built for Ford. In an attempt to improve on the Galaxy to re-enter the competition, Ford sought to achieve a significant weight reduction, and by drawing inspiration from the 1963 factory experimental Fairlane, Ford decided to equip the mid-sized standard two-door post sedan Fairlane 500 with their new 427 engine. This model would later become known as the Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt, or T-Bolt as it is affectionately known by its enthusiasts. The car had a significant advantage in weight, tipping the scales at around 3,000 pounds. With fuel and a driver and a larger engine, the car's weight would approach the 3,200 pound limit, giving it a considerable edge. However, for Ford to compete in the super stock class, they would need to build and sell 100 road-ready versions to the public to meet the NHRA regulations. As super stock drag racing gained popularity, Frank Zimmerman created created and managed a special vehicle program, establishing the Ford Drag Council, with top drivers being sponsored by Ford dealers. Zimmerman's first project was a Fairlane Thunderbolt, a factory experimental drag car designed by Ford's special vehicle program. At this time, the Fairlane's largest available engine was a 289 small block Windsor, which was considerably smaller than the 427 big block. So Ford's challenge would be how to fit the 427 into the Fairlane, and to achieve this, Ford turned to DST, and in conjunction with Andy Houghton, they began developing the Fairlane Thunderbolt. The 427 used in the Thunderbolt had a particularly aggressive custom ground solid lifter camshaft and was topped off with two large 4-barrel Holley 600 CFM carburetors, paired with a functional ram air intake system. This system funneled air directly into the carburetors through the light deletes in the front. This was achieved by removing the high beam headlights, allowing engineers to create a cold air intake system that ran from the mesh grille installed in the high beam headlight housing directly into the special air cleaner that was outfitted on the 427. The FE 427 had a compression ratio of 12.7 to 1 and was officially rated at about 425 horsepower. However, actual estimates suggest it produced over 500 horsepower, with some claims nearing the 600 horsepower mark. To be able to squeeze the 427 into the limited space in the Thunderbolt's front end required significant reworking and relocation of the car's front suspension components. The shock towers were notched, the front suspension components were relocated, and the suspension mounting locations were strengthened. Custom tubular headers were fabricated and routed in complex ways due to the limited engine bay clearance, and it was also fitted with a racing electric fuel pump. In order to help front-rear weight distribution, the battery was relocated to the trunk, and the standard unit was replaced with a 95-pound beast of a bus battery, a subtle form of ballast. Drivetrains. Each Thunderbolt was equipped with either a heavy-duty Lincoln 3-speed automatic transmission, MX Cruiser-matic, which was modified for racing with a special bell housing to enable it to fit the 427, and also had its kickdown option removed, or an aluminium-cased Borg-Warner top-loader 4-speed manual, which often cracked under extreme use and was frequently replaced with a cast iron version. The final drive ratios were 444 to 1 for automatics and 457 to 1 for 4-speeds. The Thunderbolt was also fitted with an aluminium scatter shield designed to contain the clutch in case of disintegration under load. The 1964 Fairlane 500s with 289 V8 Hypo, or high performance engines, were chosen because these models came standard with the full 9-inch rear end, the only one capable of handling the constant abuse that these cars would have to endure at the strip, and which could also be made lockable. Interiors. Interior changes were not easily noticed, and further weight reduction was necessary to maximise performance. This included replacing the stock Fairlane seats with basic flat bucket seats from an Econoline van, stripping the interior including the radio, sound deadening, carpets, passenger side sun visor and armrests. Bumpers. Early Thunderbolts had fiberglass bumpers, which deleted the front bottom section of the fenders, as well as the stone guard that connects the two fenders. After the NHRA declared fiberglass bumpers illegal, later cars were equipped with what appeared to be standard 64 bumpers, but were actually an aluminium replica. Original Thunderbolts were never fitted with fiberglass or aluminium rear bumpers. Since the cars were lighter than the class they were initially designed for, the steel rear bumpers were replaced to add some much needed weight and also assist with rear end traction. Some cars came with front mounted toe hooks. These were either square all round, and it appears that some were aluminium while others were steel, and some cars were built without them, or these may have been removed for a very minute amount of weight savings. Front end. The early cars got cloverleaf front hoods, which looked like the normal 64 hood with a 4-leaf clover design, allowing room for the airbox. This was replaced very early on because the high-rise intake manifold required additional hood clearance, leading to the Thunderbolt's iconic teardrop hood bulge, which let air out as opposed to in. Air came in via the front light vents. Traction bars. Being race cars, the Thunderbolts endured constant attempts to make them faster. This involved many things during the 64 season, but one common one was altering the traction bar setup. From DST, the Thunderbolts came with square box-style bars welded molded to the axle housing. These went forward to a cross member that doubled as a driveshaft safety loop. This setup eliminated all body roll and was very stout. Out back, the rear suspension received heavy-duty traction bars and asymmetrical leaf springs in order to help put power onto the ground. Body. It is often claimed that Thunderbolts were meant to be hardtops, like the Mercury cars and a 63 Fairlane Thunderbolt prototype, but a clerical error changed the order to the sedan code. However, this is not true. Collectors confirm that the sedan's rigidity and weight distribution made it the preferred choice for 1964, with no plans for hardtop Fairlane cars. The exterior of the Thunderbolt also underwent weight-saving modifications, featuring lightweight fiberglass and not aluminium as used by other manufacturers. This included the front fenders, door skins and the iconic teardrop hood, along with plexiglass for the side and rear windows. Even the passenger side windshield wiper, rear window cranks, spare tyre and jack were removed. That's it for part 1. In part 2, I'll be looking at the Thunderbolt's production, successes and a famous sibling.